Welcome to another episode of Burnout and Beyond. I'm Victor Bartley, your host. And in this space of Burnout and Beyond, we discuss the impact that burnout has on leaders in various industries, but not just the impact, but the process and the journey of growth, recovery, and prevention. And today we are honored to have as our guest Janice Litvin. Janice, welcome to the space.
Thank you so much, Victor. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, awesome. We are grateful. We are grateful to have you here with us. As we're getting started, if you're on the elevator with someone or you're waiting in line at Starbucks, what's the 30-second pitch that you share with them about who you are and what you do?
Thank you for asking me. That's a very fun way to ask that question. So here's my quick formal elevator pitch. I'll start with the formal, then I'll go to the informal. The
Yeah.
formal, the formal pitch is I help leaders and teams banish burnout in their organizations through keynote speeches, workshops, and accountability groups.
Awesome. Awesome. No, that's incredible work. And we know that this is a buzzword, especially in this season, but it's been a reality even prior to this COVID experience that we've been in. If you could provide for us your working definition of what burnout is.
Well, it's not just my working definition. I take my definition from the World Health Organization, who you probably know declared burnout to be an illness, a
Hmm.
syndrome that comes from ongoing chronic stress that has not been successfully managed.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that recent addition that is included, this phenomena is a step in the right direction for sure. If
Yes.
is there an experience that you've had with burnout that impacts or that you're able to leverage as you share with leaders and organizations to banish their own?
So you're asking me if I've had my own version of burnout? Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So as I said, burnout relates to an ongoing chronic stress situation. And
Hmm.
there are many times in my life where I have felt burned out. But a lot of people throw the word around. To me, real burnout has to do with somebody who's so stressed that they're emotionally and physically and mentally exhausted, which means it's to the point where they have to take disability. They have to go on leave. So I'm grateful to say that I've never been that burned out. To me, like I
Hmm.
said, that's real burnout. But I have been very stressed and luckily have caught myself. So let me think back. There was a situation where I worked for one company, I won't say the name, where I had a boss that was micromanaging, that laid a bunch of work on me, unreasonable deadlines, and I was young and I didn't know that I could push back. And so I felt a lot of resentment. I had anger. I was complaining to my friends. And it actually, all that pressure actually caused me to be less productive because I needed to let off steam. And so I would like go to coffee. I'd get to work and go to coffee and then come to my desk and work and then go to lunch. And then my boss would complain I was 10 minutes late coming back from lunch. And the more she complained, the worse it got. And she never ever sat me down and said, "What's going on with you? I can see that you're stressed." She never got there, which is unfortunate. I ended up leaving, and that was the beginning of my journey of being self-employed, which was really my ultimate goal.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. That's incredible. And as you said, the awareness that you had even in that scenario, that workplace scenario, um, to be able to respond in a way that would best suit you. And
I'll tell you one more. I'm sorry I interrupted.
no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead,
I'll tell you one more vignette from that situation.
go ahead.
As you may know, in the corporate world, there's something called performance reviews that are done once a year, sometimes twice a year. So,
Hmm.
and nobody likes them. The managers don't like them and the employees don't like them, but they need something in writing because they use those to gauge your annual raise.
Sure.
So there we were sitting there, and she was giving me all the critiques. She might have said one or two positive things. I don't remember. But I do remember her saying mostly critical things, silly
Okay.
things about being late coming back from lunch and things like that. And And so then she said something like, well, what do you think? Or do you have any questions for me? And I said, it's interesting to me that most of the time you come to me when there's a problem or a criticism, you never, ever give me positive reinforcement on my work. And she said, well, I didn't think I needed to do that. You have such a strong personality. And I said, we're all human. I am a human. I still need positive reinforcement. Yes, I have a lot of self-assurance, but I look to you for reinforcement. So that was an interesting learning experience for both of us.
Wow. And I'm sure as you have worked with organization, you've run into leaders that have been unaware of that need as
Yes.
well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
talking to a young woman, maybe she's in her
Hmm.
early 30s, and she was looking for a new job.
Hmm.
And I said, well, she said, I have this list of interview questions I ask managers or CEOs. And recently she asked a CEO, how do you feel about emotional intelligence? This is a very small company. And he said, well, I'm the CEO. Whatever I say goes. She ended
Wow.
the interview right there. She
Yeah.
said something like, emotional intelligence is very important to me. So I think what we should do is end this interview rather than wasting your time and mine. And she got up and walked out. And I thought that was
Wow.
pretty interesting for a young person
Yeah.
to have that kind of wherewithal.
No, absolutely. As you know, with the Great Resignation, one of the things that has been a catalyst in it are bad bosses.
Yes.
And so the fact that that is something that is still a predominant way of relating to employees, and those that you work in partnership with, is a very telling it's a very telling reality.
Yes.
Yes. You in your work as a wellness speaker and facilitator, you provide a tremendous resource in your book and workbook, the Banish Burnout Toolkit. Um, tell us. I know that there are six tools that you offer. Is there one that you would say is most important in your sessions, or from the six that you highlight in the book?
That's interesting. They're all it's like a child. They're all important to me. However,
Absolutely.
there are two that stand
Okay.
out. The first tool, which is stop and audit. Stop means stop, take a breath, observe and
Hmm.
proceed. Because for me personally and for my clients, it's the first step to interrupting negative thoughts. So we all have them. We're fighting
Hmm.
traffic, someone cuts us off or rear ends us on the freeway, like you talked about earlier. There's a long line to Starbucks and we're in a hurry. We got to get to work. And
Yeah.
oh my gosh, why is that customer taking so long to order? And so we start to get annoyed and we start to
Hmm.
get frustrated. And it's in that moment where behavior change can begin. If you say to yourself, wait a minute, is anybody in the hospital? Does anybody in the family have two broken legs? If not, ask yourself this question. Does this situation warrant an extreme amount of anger or anxiety? Probably not. You need to
Hmm.
just stop, take a breath, and the deep breath actually engages the parasympathetic nervous system to help calm you down. And then observe your behavior, even though it's all in your own head. We have two sides of the brain. And then move the emotional reaction to the rational part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, and say, let this go. This is not that important. The
Hmm.
important things will be there when you get there. So that's one
Yeah.
of my favorite tools. The other one, the other half of that one is the audit, the stress audit. So when something very negative happens at work, like someone is very rude for, I don't know why, or you're in a meeting trying to solve a problem and someone snaps at you and says, we don't have time for that, or that solution won't work, something negative, you're going to have a
Hmm.
reaction. You may not say
Absolutely.
anything because you're in a meeting and you want to hold decorum and be polite. But after the meeting, you're still going to have the knots in your stomach or whatever your physical reactions are. And it's important to pay attention, because what happens if you hold those in? You explode later.
Absolutely.
So that's those two pieces are the first tool. The fifth tool is called set healthy boundaries. This is a huge problem in workplaces, especially with younger workers who think they're supposed to say yes to everything. And not just at
Mhm.
work, at home too. Every time I do
True.
this workshop, someone will either pose a question or write to me after and say, I really needed to hear that. I don't know how to say no to my family every time they want something, or I didn't know it was okay to push back at work. So here's
Mhm.
how it works. For example, the boss comes to you with an exciting new project, but you've
Mhm.
got 10 or however many other quote virtual piles on your desk. Sometimes the boss is so knee deep in their own work that they don't know exactly what you're working on, and they're not smart enough to check in with you every single week and say, what are you working on? How's it going? So besides
Mhm.
that, it's okay to say, yes, of course, I'm happy to take on this new project. Which of my other projects should I back burner to give me time to work on this
Mm.
project? So it's a way, it's not really saying no, but it's a way to push back and communicate by saying, I've got this other work. How should we go forward?
No, that's awesome. No, those are awesome. The whole piece of stopping is such an anecdotal ailment of sorts and remedy because we're on a go so much.
Yes. Yes.
And so the vital importance of stopping is it's so simple yet so significant.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
so
It's
significant.
simple, but it's not easy. It's
No,
simple, but it's not
absolutely,
easy because it's major
absolutely.
behavior change. What I've started doing is giving away a visual that I use in my slides, which is a stop sign with the word stop, take a breath, observe, proceed. And I give that away and I tell people, put that on your bulletin board or put it on your refrigerator,
Mm.
wherever you need to remind you to begin to stop when you allow
Mhm.
your mind to get out of control.
No, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. It's almost. I know that you're on the West Coast, and there's a term, and maybe it's just a stereotypical joke, but the rolling California stop, right, where people don't actually stop, but keep moving, and so we can tend to take that position in life as well sometimes, and so no, you're absolutely right. Just actually follow the rules, so to speak. Follow the rules and follow the rules of not just of transportation, but also in life's journey and well being. The other one that you mentioned about boundaries, uh, in your facilitation, what has been the biggest challenge that people have had to setting boundaries?
No one taught them how. It's just one of those life skills.
Mm.
I grew up with a mother that, may she rest in peace, who was a very, very, very smart, strong woman. She did not have boundaries growing up. I'm guessing her parents didn't have boundaries growing up. She grew up in a different era, of course. And so she would just barge into my bedroom anytime she wanted. I didn't know it was okay to say, please knock. I was never allowed to
Mm.
say no to my mother, ever, ever. I mean, as I got older and became a teenager, of course, I acted out as many teenagers
As
do,
men
but
do. Sure.
I was never really taught how to push back to other people. For example, she would always say yes when someone asked her to do something. And if it was for a friend, she didn't mind. But if it was a situation where it was going to cause her some stress or she didn't have time, she would still say yes. And then she'd complain.
Mm.
And that
Mhm.
was her
Mhm.
way of communicating, was complaining to somebody else because she wasn't taught how to say, I'd love to come to your dinner. I can't bring soup. I'm 88 years old. I can't deal with all that soup, but what I will do is I'll bring a broccoli dish. She couldn't even do that because she was
Mm.
taught that you don't say no to people, period.
No, and that's so significant because as we deal with burnout, one of the probably I'd say the most underrated contributor are the voices in our mind that come from influential people that may be alive, that may have passed, but their voice still resonates within us, and we
Absolutely.
just follow what they did. We follow what they did without thinking. It's second nature, and so that's so important and powerful. We have three young toddlers, Our oldest just turned 3.
Oh,
And one of the things that, as you're saying, I had to become more aware of is that, when they say no, begin teaching them how to do it politely, right?
well, a
Instead of
toddler.
just,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not a child psychologist, but
sure,
when my son, who's almost 28, when he was a baby, what I was taught was when a toddler's saying no, that's them declaring their independence. So to
sure,
and their own identity. So to some
absolutely,
degree, we want them to learn how to say no. But like you say, if
absolutely,
you're out in public and they go, no, I don't want to,
absolutely,
whatever, of
absolutely,
course you want to say, as they get older, when the 3-year-old can now learn how to say, please, Father, may I
please,
not?
yep,
Yeah, please, may
absolutely,
I skip the broccoli tonight? I promise
absolutely.
I won't eat too much ice cream, or what, however you're going to teach him how to say it.
No, absolutely. But no, but you're right. But from what you shared in your upbringing, I can relate to that. Like the idea of telling my parents no wasn't fathomable.
Right?
It
That would
wasn't
have been,
fathomable.
yeah, that would have been disrespectful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, you know, at some level we carry that into adulthood. If we haven't learned the skill, it's
Absolutely.
not just something that we just pick up.
Yeah, where would you
And
learn it?
so,
They don't teach that in college
absolutely,
unless you're
absolutely.
studying psychology.
Sure, sure. No, and this is so important, and I believe it's Jim Rohn that talks about developing yourself, prioritizing developing yourself, even more than you do development professionally on the job, because it's how you are developing that's ultimately going to propel your professional growth and just your life fulfillment and peace. And so that piece about boundaries is critical, and I think extremely powerful that your clients are able to make the connection. Like, wow, I didn't know I had permission.
Yes.
I,
You
I didn't know
bring
I
up
had
another
permission.
point without realizing it. It's something I've been thinking a lot about lately, and
Mhm,
that is the topic of accountability partners or accountability buddies. Again, another skill not taught anywhere. A lot of
mhm,
people, CEOs, have accountability partners with other CEO groups. A lot
mhm,
of managers have these management groups. Individual contributors are never taught. They expect their boss to be their mentor, and to some degree the boss is, but some bosses are not equipped to
mhm.
help people get up through the ranks. Or if the boss is a male and the employee is a female, she might want a female accountability partner or
Mhm,
mentor to help
mhm.
guide her through an organization, because the sad fact is women are still discriminated against, as are
Absolutely.
many groupings of people. And so
Absolutely.
having somebody help you navigate the process is a huge source of support that a lot of people don't think about, and it's something I'm going to start talking more about in my workshops.
No, absolutely. And no one's the Lone Ranger doesn't survive very often, right? The the
Right.
the idea that idea and notion that sometimes can go unchecked is, I've got to figure it out on my own, or I've got to do this by myself, or
And we're afraid to ask for help because we think we're
absolutely.
bothering the other person. What people don't realize is many people have gotten help along the way, and people love to help other people. All you need to do is ask, and ask politely. And I'm starting to
Absolutely.
actually give scripts. There's actually a script in the book of how to choose an accountability partner. Maybe you just need
Mm.
1 hour visit. Maybe you need 3 visits. Maybe it doesn't have
Mhm.
to be 6 months or a year. Or if somebody doesn't have time, but they say, okay, I can meet with you for 1 hour, take it. Say yes. You learn a lot of valuable things from every single person you interact with.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these things go back to childhood. These are simple things that have huge impact. But again, if these skills are not taught, they must be learned. They must be learned, and they aren't just things that we pick up by osmosis.
Right.
Uh, as you have been in various spaces and interacted with various industries and clients, what are some of the stories that stick with you after the presentation has ended and someone has approached you and they're pouring their heart, or they're sharing more um, following the presentation? What are one of those stories that stuck with you in your journey?
There are many, but the one of them that's pretty simplistic, but again,
Okay.
it brings up an important point. People need a break at
Mm-hmm.
home after work time. And I know all the lines have gotten blurred in the last 18 months, but we
Mm-hmm.
still need a separation, especially on the weekends. Unless you're supporting a piece of software that's running overnight, which is like an IT job, and you need
Sure.
to be you're like on call. If you're not on call, you shouldn't be bothered on the weekends. And I shouldn't be surprised because
Mm-hmm.
there's so much literature and data about wellness, and most large organizations support wellness in some way these days. But one time, a young woman wrote to me and said, "My boss expects me to be on call all weekend and respond to
Mm-hmm.
emails right then." And I was so disheartened. I couldn't believe that in a large company, people are still behaving like that. And I said, the best thing you can do is you provide evidence that the value of allowing employees to be completely offline on the weekends is that they're more productive during the week.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the horse that doesn't get a break and doesn't
Mm-hmm.
get any water or a break, they collapse. Well,
Sure. Absolutely.
mentally, that's a prescription for burnout if people aren't getting a break.
Absolutely.
Just like we need our sleep, we need our breaks.
Absolutely. 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 No, and workplace culture has its role to play in some scenarios that burnout occurs in. As someone's listening to our conversation and you haven't been in their space to present and to share with their organization. um, what is something that they can do in the meantime before you come and share with them?
They can read the book. They can start looking at the book and write to me. I respond to all emails. They can
Awesome.
connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every day, probably more than I should be, but I'm always trying to put out literature that I think can apply. I send out a newsletter once a week. People can sign up
Okay.
for that. And in the newsletter, I always write a blog, and it always relates to one of these burnout topics.
Okay. Okay.
And there are all of the prior blogs are on my website on the blogs page.
Okay. Okay. No, that is awesome. That is awesome. And you shared with us about your book, the Banish Burnout Toolkit.
Yes.
Um, Tell us your website and other ways that we can connect with you.
You can connect with me through janicelitvin.com. I think you can see the spelling of my name on the tag here at the bottom. So it's janicelitvin.com. And
Okay. Awesome.
just my email address, it's all there.
Okay. Awesome. 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 Again, we just want to encourage you to get that book, Banish Burnout Toolkit, as you are navigating what you may suppose to be burnout or even full on a burnout experience that you are dealing with. We know that leaders in various spaces are definitely wanting to tackle this challenge, tackle this phenomenon now. And so, again, we want to thank Janice for her expertise and her time as she has shared with us some beautiful gems to remember and to practice in this space. We want to thank you again for those that are watching this rebroadcast episode. And we want you to always remember that burnout is an invitation to begin again. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you for having me, Victor.
Absolutely.